Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Aurora. This class is called Path of Light, and I'm so happy and excited to be teaching it for you. I have done this class, this curriculum several times in the past, and I used to do it on Saturday mornings in conjunction, like I would be doing my Wednesday classes and be going through all of those types of lessons, and then at the same time, doing Saturday class. And I would say, hi, SJ, great to see you. Absolutely wonderful to connect. I would say Saturday mornings, usually you were like sipping on coffee in pajamas, playing, watching cartoons, being relatively silly and lighthearted, but instead you're gonna come and do brain work, heavy lifting with your mental muscles and everything you possibly can in order to challenge yourself. Well, we're just switching Saturday class to Wednesday class. So for the next 4 Wednesdays, this will be the easiest, most fun, coolest part of your day because I really do mean it. What I would like for you to do is to consider this time that we're going to spend focusing on light and all things related to light, talking about it and thinking about it. Think of it as a refuge. All right. Because usually on Wednesday classes, I talk about all sorts of things. I hold up signs, I make allusions, I use allegories about many things that are not perfect in our world. But when I'm going to teach about Path of Light here, we're really going to focus on things that are divinely perfect. So please know, as my introduction here, none of this is in denial of the garbage stuff that is in our world. I don't pretend that it isn't there. But for the next 4 weeks, we're going to just focus exclusively on light and on things that are really divinely perfect. And I would encourage you during these next 4 weeks, with your daily practices, take refuge in thinking about light, because this is what I have done through many times in my life when there's a lot of turmoil or when there's a lot of imperfection and the noise to signal ratio is much more noise and much less signal. To think about light. It is literally all around us in our environment. It is a divine miracle of existence, and it is also very much the pathway of attainment. So that's a little bit of my intro. I'll do, first of all, I have so much to say even before we jump into the curriculum. Welcome to everybody who's new. So there's some wonderful new people who have found my Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans Wednesday class and have segued seamlessly into this class. This class is definitely the advanced, super advanced stuff that I'm going to be sharing with everyone. So I'm very pleased for you to be here. And I did send out what I call the homework videos earlier. I really encourage and emphasize how important it is to watch those videos because they're very well crafted in how I use my drawings to bring forward complex concepts that here I'm going to recreate some of those drawings and we're really going to go over them. But watch those whiteboards. They are chock full. They are meat and potatoes. They are the real entree that will nourish you on an intellectual and spiritual level. And basically what I'm going to do throughout these 4 weeks is bring you through a series of cognitive exercises that bring you from your present perspective to the perspective of what it is like when you are literally made of pure light. And this is our journey and this is our goal for attainment. So it's a wonderful, positive, good thing that you would wish to do. And I'm going to give you step-by-step, unintimidating segments that you can master. And then as you master each conceptual segment, just like being a musician, then we're going to take it from the top and put it all together. You're going to have an amazing symphony of comprehension. So when I say Path of Light, I'll talk a little bit more about this. This is all still intro because I like to kind of get you going. We need a warm up here. Path of Light is about moving from the perspective of being a matter being, like material and physical, and watching light as it is moving on its journey, kind of in the same way that you might be standing on the roadside and then watching cars whizzing by or trucks going by very fast. You are observing that something is happening, but you're not necessarily in the first person experience or viewpoint of it. But when you're in the path of light, you are switching your perspective from being on the side of the road, watching light and as it is whizzing past you at an almost unfathomable speed, to being directly in its path. And although in my allegory, you might say, Aurora, it does not sound very positive, like for me to be standing in the middle of the road with cars or trucks streaming directly at me. The metaphor breaks down, it's true. If you're light, then you want to be standing in the middle of the highway of light so that it literally flows directly into you. And that experience of it flowing directly into you is nourishing, uplifting, and informative, and is transformative too. It is part of the metamorphose or state change that you'll experience. So also, just as a little bit more intro, I'm going to use a lot of science words, but I am not a scientist. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a lot of things. I'm an otherworldly visitor, and I am a intuitive or a psychic. And this is where I get all of my information from. So I use some of these concepts and words that are a common ground that we can use to be able to talk about things, but also please know that I'm not really embracing or promoting the scientific viewpoint or claiming that training in any way, but we can use that as a starting point to be able to talk about some of these very, very abstract concepts. And then I'd also like to tell you, as a segue from there, where did I get this information from? This is all the way back in 2021. And I sat down in my lawn chair, as I sometimes do. This time it was kind of in an evening time as the sun was going down, and I was having a conversation with the stars. And why are the stars so important in everything that I'm going to teach you about in this class? Because literally the stars are the primary origin for light in our world. If you consider, where does light come from? Like right now in your room, you might look around and you might see an electric light bulb. I have one right here. Or you might see a computer screen. Or you even might see a candle. But then you will also see the sun outside of your window if it is daytime where you're living. And that is really the primary place where all of these other outgrowths or secondary or tertiary light sources come from. The sun, the stars, these are emanators of light in our world. And every time I talk about light, you really must start doing the consciousness exercise to replace the word light with intelligence, data, meaning organized information, orderliness, consciousness or awareness. Even you can think of it as aliveness itself, vivification, the ability to grow and become more wise. That is what light is. So I sat down and was having a moment to be able to talk to the stars. It's not always that easy because in our world right now, there are many things that are inhibitors. Some of them are particles in the atmosphere around this planet. Some of them are frequencies in the atmosphere around this planet. So of course, I've spoken about that at length in all of my Wednesday classes. So we know that there's bad garbage. It's why it's so hard to get this information. So when I received this, I was very, very happy to share. But this is what my experience was like. I absorbed a lot of direct light from the stars and comprehended all of this on a deep intuitive level without words as one whole entire, we'll call it a chunk of stuff. And then I was like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Of course, I'm excited to share it with the world around me. How in the world am I going to share these concepts with the world around me? Because these things are really, really hard to put into words. And I was very, very intimidated by it. And I kind of had to sneak up on this project. And I worked on my own, just kind of figuring out the drawings and figuring out how I would articulate this. And it actually took me, this is the sixth class cycle that I've taught this material. It actually took me a couple of years to get a running jump and have a way to be able to get traction on how to talk about these concepts and also how to know that I'm presenting them in a way that is accessible and palatable to you, the receivers. So I'm always looking for that type of back and forth. But please know that this is going to stretch your mind muscles in enormous amount, and that I've had to create new vocabulary, both with words and with pictures, to be able to talk about these things. So when I say this is the advanced class, I'm really going to ask you to use your imaginations and your ability to project an extra layer of comprehension upon the diagrams that I present to you, so that you understand what I'm drawing might appear to be a simple line drawing, but you're going to have to do a lot of mental work to be able to know that I'm drawing more than just a simple line drawing. Okay. So all of that to be said, strap yourselves in and prepare for brain liquefaction imminently. Hooray. And I was joking before because I'm drinking a small amount of caffeine. I have some tea here today. If ever there's a time to be exposed to caffeine, you get your brain going. It's this class now. Okay, wonderful. So everybody, thank you very much. Oh, and I should have brought up my notes before I began this. Pardon me. Let me pause for one moment. I was Quentin's role. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me that brief interruption. Oh, and also, so one more thing before I actually, get going on my curriculum here. So for anyone who's catching this on YouTube, I'm very, very pleased for you to be here. I'm pleased for you to watch these things. If you're not formally enrolled in the actual Path of Light class, I would encourage you to enroll, because then I'll be able to send you the whiteboards. You can do your homework and you can get the all of the nutrition that I'm offering to you. So the details of that will always be in the description of the video. And this will always be archived for people who are not able to catch this in the actual time zone. Okay, so starting with the definition of light. Light as being intelligence or data, orderliness, information, sentience was the word I was looking for, and also critical word, truthfulness. And it is a description of the reality of the world around us. Literally, light allows us, or makes it possible for us, to perceive and comprehend the world around us. If there's no light, there's pretty much no information for us to know about. Sorry, getting rid of a distraction there. All right. So some of the things that I'm going to be going over that will be throughout the next several weeks have to do with the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. And I sometimes abbreviate that as STC, space-time consciousness. Please know that the fabric of space-time consciousness is not merely a dead abstraction, like a tablecloth or something like that. It is very much filled with sentience on its own. It is an alive, sentient, complex, interwoven tapestry of events. And this is a critical aspect of elevating your perspective out of materialism and linear viewpoint, into a non-linear viewpoint and a non-materialistic viewpoint of pure energy, which is path of light. Recognizing that really the light all around you is all self-aware, alive, and sentient, as is or are the fabric of events that sustain us in the physical world. I'm going to do a lot with contrasting your former way of doing things and thinking about things, which I could call the old model. It's also the linear model, with the new model, which is what I am presenting to you, which is a non-linear model. And also, I'm just reading my notes, sorry about that, higher dimensional perspective on what light actually is and how light actually behaves. So we're moving beyond the materialistic concept of kind of taking the world of space-time for granted. Like, no, it's just a tablecloth that we all live on and that sustains us in reality. Like, no, it's alive. But also light itself being alive and having a sense of behavior, like preferences. Like when something is alive, there are things that it prefers to do, behaviors that are comfortable and natural, things that it does not prefer to do, things that are not that comfortable and natural. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to begin with a lot of drawings. That's why I have my whole little setup prepared over here. I'm just going to take another little sip of tea, and then let's go into some drawings. And I'll give you animations too. I got everything. We're gonna have we're gonna have so much fun. It's going to be amazing. I'm pressing buttons. Thank you for your patience. I'm pressing buttons. Okay, good. The first thing is I will always be consistent through all of my drawings that I'm sharing with you. I will always be consistent, choosing the same colors and creating the same basic shapes. So I think it helps your mind to see and to learn in this way. And if it's repetitive, and if you've already taken this class, do it again. Go through the steps again, because this is how musicians learn. You take it from the top, okay? So the first thing is every time I draw, that is a giant fat line. All right. That's also, thank you very much for your patience when I will make a lot of mistakes. Thank you for your patience. Here, let's make this a little bit better. Every time I draw a red circle like this is going to be my representation of the sun or a star. And please know that this is my simple line drawing, but we're really looking at something that is spherical, that has formfulness and shape. And also a key point is that the light that is interacting with this star that comes from it or enters into reality, all these interactions, please know that that is around the entire thing. So that's not just on one surface. We're really talking about envisioning a dandelion seed head, something that has emanations from in every direction, every direction, every direction, because you will see some of my shorthands, and it might look like arrows going off in one direction like this, and you might think that it's just radial spokes. Please know that this is all meant to represent something that is spherical. Some of the basic shapes of the cosmic infrastructure are spherical. So at times I will represent time this is terrible grammar. I was going to say at times I will represent time as a flat plane, but I knew that that would be confusing, but it is what I'm doing. At times, occasionally, I will draw a flat plane that maybe even might look like something like this, but it's time, and time is actually a sphere as well. But I'm working with conventions. I'm asking you to move past these simple line drawings and knowing that it's a convention to actually get the meat and potatoes of the concept of what I'm sharing. The next important part of this drawing that I'm always going to be consistent with is this purple dot that's at the middle. And I'll make it a very, very large exaggerated dot, but that is singularity. So any place in these drawings going forward for this class where I make the purple dot, that is singularity. And the singularity is consistent through all of these different drawings, and it appears in multiple different places, but there's only one singularity. So wait. I know I just went by fast. Instead of going zoom, zoom, zoom so fast over that, let me slow down. Let me say with huge emphasis that singularity by its nature is single. There is only one singularity in the entirety of not only this universe or one timeline, but the entirety of the multidimensional vast array of complex possibilities anywhere, anywhen. Only one singularity. This is one of the most profound concepts you can ever meditate upon. Knowing more and more about that, or focusing your mind's eye on that, is always going to help you on your journey. So basically, when you're using your higher faculties, your higher senses, your tendril of attention, you can reach out and you can touch on garbage. We've been touching on garbage a lot in my other class. But right now, what we're going to do is reach out and we're going to touch on concepts like the singularity or just singularity, and really absorb the profound nature of what that is. Because when I say there is singularity inside of this sun star, yes, that is true. But let's draw all of these other stars. And I'm going to use the magic of perspective to make it look like some of them are farther away because some of them are tiny and some of them are bigger because they're close up, right? But all of these represent different points of light that are stars that we see in the sky. And each one of these has singularity at its center. Purple dot, purple dot, purple dot, purple dot. It's the same purple dot. These are not different places. They're all the same place. And so I'm going to ask you to do some mental acrobatics now. I'm going to ask you to imagine what would happen if we took the space between that purple dot, and here I am kind of making a little motion line towards this purple dot. And what if we erase the space between there? What would this drawing look like if we took all of these seemingly spread out stars or openings or origin points? Origin point is the best word I can come up with right now. Origin places of light. And if we overlapped them so that there was no space in between them, because the truth is they are actually not spread out. They are all on top of one another. So what that drawing would look like if we changed it around, I want to do like, like quick change to the next drawing, but I'm just scrolling over here. We would get a drawing something like this. Here's one star, but then here's the next star. And it's not a perfect overlap. And then here's the next star. Ooh, this is going to get really messy. And then here's the next star. They're all literally on top of each other. And here is singularity that is at the center here. And also, please know that these are spherical objects. So, I could draw them almost like here's a shell, right? Like a shell that's almost like an orange that's been cut in half. This is a terrible drawing, but you have a shell and then you have another shell on top of and around that, another shell on top of and around that. This is what you really have. You have all of these stars that are overlapping shells that are constantly on top of one another. So over here, what we did was we took this space and time, where I'm drawing this black line. This is literally the fabric of space-time. And sometimes, like I said, I draw it as if it is a flat playing card or a piece of paper. And I even make these lines on it because it's a convention that we use in order to comprehend the Cartesian plane. But what you would do is you would bend that fabric so that it is not a flat plane. Let's erase this. Let's erase this out of here. That was satisfying. And let's draw it more like this. You would start to bend this so that it's like that. And this would also be kind of bent. You'd start to bend it. Let's show some of these lines so that you're getting a sense of what I'm talking about here. This becomes a pliable fabric of space-time as the stars overlap and as this star comes closer inward towards here. And what you end up with is, choose the proper color for you. You would end up with a loop that kind of sticks out like that. So now you're understanding why I'm calling stars origin points of light, because from the linear viewpoint, light is flinging off of the surface of the star. Like from the linear viewpoint, which I didn't go through fully, but I should go through, yellow is always going to be the color of light. So let's say from the linear viewpoint, light starts off from the star and it goes endlessly in one direction. And unless it meets an object or has an interaction in some way. So of course, if I was truthfully more accurate, I would show light as a waveform like this, because we recognize that it has this curly maneuver to it. I don't know why that other line showed up. That was kind of exciting. No, now everything is strange. Just go with it. And that curliness really emanates all around. If this is starting to look like, like whatever, curly pasta, it is kind of like that. It is a ridged surface. This is literally what the fabric of light that's being emitted by stars looks like all around them. So you have many, many, many of these waveforms that fit together into this complex tapestry. But we simplify it as a convention, especially in the world of science and talking about it with those words. We simplify it by talking about the photon. And that's what I'm making over here. It's what looks like the snake's head. The photon, a packet of light. Because what you could imagine is that this waveform of light is made from a dot that is moving up and down, right? And that this is just the present position of that dot. The dot is the photon. The photon is the expression of light, not as a giant ocean, but just as one particle, even though that convention is wholly inadequate to talk about the phenomenon of what light is. So it's only a convenience, like trying to say, like, we want to bake a cake, so we're just going to use a teaspoon to measure something, but it is really not, it is an arbitrary measurement, and it is not totally accurate to reality. Choosing my words very carefully, very intentionally. I'm going to stop share for a moment. Oh, no, wrong button. Oh my God, keep me on track, guys. Let me choose the right button and share a different picture. This is a little sketch that I did this morning. Okay, oh, I didn't clap somebody's faces. There we go. So, oh, I missed my opportunity to have actual, so just follow the cursor. Okay. Am I confusing you yet? Good. Stick with me. Good. So in this sketch, this is an enlargement of that yellow dot that I just drew, the photon. And in the center of every photon is singularity. So this is how you comprehend this. At the center of every photon is singularity. At the center of every sun is singularity. Literally at the center of each organism, at yourself, a tree, a dog, a bird, is singularity. The photon is not merely a ball of light, and it is not merely a ball of light that is traveling in a linear convention. It is actually a ball of light that contains the story of all light from its origins ever. Like once upon a time, a photon was born into existence and it came into existence and then it did lots and lots and lots of stuff. And then now the photon is here now. The photon contains all of that information in it. You could consider it almost as if you are diving backwards in time as you enter into the photon and comprehend that it contains a history or a record of light. So it's not just a glowing object. It's not just an energetic object. It contains information. The information is not merely illuminative, like, hooray, I turned on the lights and now I can see the things around me. The information it contains is about its journey. Like, where has this photon been before this moment now in space-time? It contains all of that. And it contains all of that information literally all the way back to the origin of photon and to the origin of time itself. So this view over here is the view of the photon as if you were looking at it from a sphere, right? Like a grapefruit, but the grapefruit has been cut in half. And then this is the singularity, right? Where the seed, the pith is in the middle, right? But this is the grapefruit looked at from the side. And this would be almost like looking at the portal that you would dive into. And then this would be like looking at everything that's the record going backwards in time to the origin point of singularity. But I want you to know that this journey from here to here is infinite space. Brain liquefied, I know. And here you can see on my little graph. So this moment out here is the moment now. And on this graph, time marches inward in this direction, but singularity is infinity. So time goes inward in infinite amount of time. You could dive into a photon, take an infinite journey into that experience in infinite amount of time. Okay, back to my existing whiteboard. Take a cup, sip of tea. Let's keep going. So now that I taught you about what photon is, and now that you know what this dot is and why it is important, what I was showing you is the former linear viewpoint that the photon goes on a journey. This is the old way. First, I'm teaching you, like, this is how you guys used to play piano, but get prepared because you will now learn new skills. But in the old way of thinking about it, the photon goes on a journey. Like it jumps off of the surface of the earth. Sorry, not surface of the earth, the surface of the sun. Sorry if my words didn't work. The photon goes on a journey. It jumps off of the surface of the sun or the star, and it goes flinging off into the fabric of space. And we even perceive, oops, this area in between stars as like, this is where light travels, right? We even call it, light years. This speaks to the mentality of, I want to say your species, but like your culture so far, that you have this sense of how far does light travel in a year from star system to star system. It is envisioned that this place where I'm scribbling, this is like a vast empty area, a void, that there is nothing there, and that light, little tiny particles of light, are flinging their ways across that vast empty area. I'm going to have to plug in my thing also. Don't worry, because I am prepared, because I knew that this would happen. So I'm like, oh, like the battery is running low. I have a thing. Don't worry. This will happen. This will happen. I'm so prepared. So impressed by me now. Kachunka. Kachunka, take that battery. Um, but that is the old way of doing things. Considering that the light is flinging off of the sun or the star and then moving in some linear direction is the old way of doing things. What really happens is that light goes on a journey that is a journey of consciousness. This journey over here is a journey of awareness. Why does light go on a journey? It goes on a journey, as each one of us do, in order to learn more, to develop greater levels of sentience, literally to become more intelligent. Like you can even ask this question, if you really want to liquefy your brains, where does information come from? Is there a static and limited amount of information in the totality of existence, or is more information constantly being created and generated? And the answer is there is not a limit. There's an enormous amount of information presently available or alive in the world, and that there is an even larger amount of information to be explored, generated, or created through the process of being alive. And that through being alive, wisdom is accreted, light is created. And this speaks directly to your own life. Like, please know, like, this all is direct allegory for you in your own life. You came into being in order to become more wise and to grow in maturity and to evolve. And this is more than just on a humanistic or anthropocentric level. This is to get more light. You came here to get more light, or to get lighter, or to make more light in the world. And that is what is happening. So, because you're going to ask the question, like, mommy, daddy, like, why does the stupid photon even do its stupid thing? And the answer is because it wants to learn and do stuff. And so that's why we're doing it. Sorry, I called it a stupid photon, but like with scorn and derision, like, why does this nonsense even happen? And it happens because it's going to learn and grow. So the old way of looking at things was as if this is an arrow, and sometimes I make an infinity sign like this because it shows that the light is going off on its journey endlessly. So for example, if a photon in the old linear model didn't ever interact with an object, like that light never, quote unquote, fell upon an object. Even our words are very, very difficult with this because light doesn't fall on an object. It can be absorbed by an object. It can be transformed by an object. It can pass through an object, but it's not falling. It's technically not even subject to gravity. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks in this class too. But if it does not interact with the material object, then that light would simply go onward on its journey forever. And the things that I talk about in my my other Wednesday class, I talk about photons as feelers and the sense of the sun sending out these beams of light in order to be able to learn what is around in the environment. Like if there, let's just choose a different color. If the light touches upon something here, then there's an interaction, and that interaction will bounce energy back to the sun, and then the sun will be able to be like, oh, there's a thing there, kind of like a bat's echolocation. But if there is no thing there, then the sun gets no information, and it just says, oh, there's nothing there. So I'm just going to presume giant emptiness and nothingness there. And just file that away too, because we're going to really talk about musicians in a band and what is it like when you give a musician music to play in the band that just says, just rest. Don't play, just rest. That is what this experience is. That would be like saying, not a very good musician, stand there with your triangle waiting to ding and never actually ding. Yeah, and there might be a reason for that. There might be reasons for all of this, okay? So I think I went over and emphasized enough the thing I'm now bringing you past, because now let's erase the linear model. Get out of here, linear model. That's not what we're thinking about anymore. No, now we're thinking about it in this way, that here's the next crucial color on my diagram over here, the yellow of the photon. The photon never leaves home. And this is, of course, a hugely exaggerated photon. But the photon never leaves home. This is the photon in its comfy pajamas, in its bed, a cup of tea next to it, and all of its pillows exactly the way it likes it. And it's like, I am not going anywhere. I am staying right here. Exactly the same way where we have all of these stars overlapping. When we comprehend this new diagram, here is photon. And photon, or the photon, or all light, that is actually just like I did many, many multiple overlappings of the stars. Please know that this is every photon. This would be overlapped many, many, many times. You could consider it as the overlapping of many, many independent particles, or that particle is moving back and forth through time so many times that it appears as if there are many of it, but there is only one. All right. And of course, this is more mental calisthenics. I want you to do these mental stretches. So that concept that there is only one photon that is endlessly, let's say, like, being emitted, doing stuff in time, and then rewinding itself and going back in time, and then emitted in a slightly, here's emitted in a slightly different position, and then going back in time, and then emitted to the future, and then going back in time. Like, that is actually from the work of a physicist named Richard Feynman. Not a complete endorsement of the man, because I think maybe he was a little strange, but very interesting concept. And I think that he helped elevate humanity by bringing forward that concept that there really is only one photon. And imagine, like, it moves forward through time like an old-fashioned audio tape. You listen to the tape to the end, and then flip it around, and then listen to side B, which brings you right back to side A, which brings you right back to side B. And that this is what you're endlessly doing with this photon moving backwards and forwards through time, okay? So either way, either there is one photon or there are multiple photons, but it's completely overlapped in this position. And in the new model that I'm showing you here, that photon, that light, it actually never leaves home. And instead, all of the things that we perceive as interstellar space, like here is point A, and here is point B, and here is the place where light is flying from point A to point B, and we call it light years, all of that space must be transformed is a better word than collapse, but we must perceive that space in a different way. So how do we perceive it? Perceive it not as lines, but as loops. And those loops aren't static. They're constantly either growing or shrinking. And I'm going to show you an animation to describe this, but first I'm going to describe it with words. And I'm going to tell you, why do the loops get bigger and smaller? Because you're having consciousness events. If you never interacted with matter as a photon, then this loop would grow endlessly. It would go all the way off your screen, all the way off your screen, and it would keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you would go all the way towards whatever, the Grand Canyon and over the edge and over the edge, it would never stop. It would be like a photon that is moving forward and never interacts with matter and never sends back or broadcasts any information. But just like I have taught about in Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, when you perceive light and you have a correct direct connection to the sun and the rest of the stars, you broadcast back your experience. So humans for many, many years have had, let's get a doo-doo color, some crapola coming between them and the sun, right? Something that I teach about in class, but we're going to ignore it away for right now. The things that are like the verbalized mind, the hacking of the human operating system, various different inhibitory frequencies and obstacles that make it difficult for your mind to be laser-like focused and completely connected to the sun. And that this is the reason why humans have not had the direct guidance and direct relationship with the sun and the stars that, of course, you would like to have. And this has led to vulnerabilities in the rectification and improvement of your timeline while you are still alive. That due to the time lag of you actually giving feedback to the sun about what your life experience is, the sun has not been able to effectively anticipate your needs and respond to your needs, because by the time your needs are expressed and perceived, you are dead. So really, really vulnerable there. We're trying to get the band together. The sun is the tap, tap, tap conductor. And it's like, now it's time for you to play. But you didn't hear that message and you can't talk back to the sun. And by the time you talk back to the sun, it's because you're dead. And the sun is like, great. Like, I wish I had known that a long time ago. I clearly would have changed and rectified the situation, because all of this music that the sun is making is a work in progress. Big, 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 big stuff. It is an exploration in time that is intended to create more light, meaning that the information is growing, it's getting focused, the sun is becoming more intelligent through doing this. But the process of growing more intelligence and creating more light means it is an imperfect piece that is in the process of being explored and expressed and refined to perfection. So that is why you would want to be able to say, your car is driving off a road. You need help now. And the sun needs to fix that now. Otherwise, your life is over. And it's a lot to coordinate all of these different organisms and keep all these plates spinning. And many organisms clearly have been falling into peril instead of being fully sustained. All of this can be restored. We're talking about restoring the original way that things are supposed to be done, but also with extras. So not just rewinding and trying to back the way that you were a long time ago or in another world, a pristine time, an idealized time, but really to take that idealized time and then all of the turmoil that you've been in a non-pristine system and synthesize something new out of both of those two viewpoints. Okay. The growing and shrinking of these loops is directly related to the feedback that you can give to the sun. Because when you, if I draw a little person over here, but please don't be literal in thinking that, this is like a person on a planet over here. It's just a little representation. But this person also has singularity at the center, and this person also has observership. And when this person or any organism experiences something with light, that is the shrinking of the loop. That moment when you're connected to the sun and you experience light, that is when this gets smaller and you're sending that light back to the sun. So the sun does send out light to you. The light is not necessarily in a line that's an arrow like this. It's a loop. It's a loop that you participate in. And the sending back of the light to the sun is this making the loop smaller. All right, we're going to do more words later, but for right now, let's do an animation. Because sometimes I'm like, these words, like I can even tell they sound, I didn't even know it's the word, like Ridiculous. Hold on a second. I know I have. Yeah, just hold on. Nothing is working. Okay, too many things. Hold on. Stop share. So I have this thing right here. The words sound ridiculous, but they are not ridiculous. They make perfect sense. They make perfect sense. Just do this. All right. Hold on. I have one more thing. I have many more things because I have to press a button over here because I want you to hear the music. So now you will hear the music and reload the player. And let's hope everything works for us. Cool. All right, here's a little simple animation that I made. Just hope it works. Come on, thing. Come on, thing. Come on, thing. You can do it. Where's the thing? Play. There should be a play button here. Oh, naughty thing. Play button. You should be here. Play button. No. No. Come on, naughtiness. Okay, sigh. Just hold on. Due to nonsense crapola of me not being able to access my 30-second video off of Vimeo effectively, which is making me very, very mad, I will now show it to you just by holding up an alternative device. That was also very, very distressing. But let's see also, can I make the brightness on this a little bit better so that you can see it? Hold on a minute. Get our brightness up so that you can see what I'm trying to share with you here. Good. Okay. Press play. Oh, try it again. There we go. Can this work? Everybody is jumping out a window right now. Nonsense. Just do it, please. I'm so relaxed on the path of light. Well, anyway, what you're seeing here is the oscillative pattern that is happening from the light that is going on its journey, emerging into existence. These loops of the fabric of space-time are being created as the photon goes on its journey. And then these loops are contracting as the energy of experience is sent back to the sun. So in my lovely, wonderful animation that I was not able to access effectively for our class that I'm very, very mad about, I have this looped together nicely with a little soundtrack on it. And you can get a sense, okay, I'll put this down now, that there's a music to it. There is a music to it. So what do we call music? Music is harmonics, like what is on my dress. It is a sense of patterns. These are non-random loops that are happening. So just like with music, if you are ever to look at an oscilloscope, you have larger waves that are up and smaller waves that are down. If your voice is loud, if there's a trumpet or something like that, and then smaller waves if there's a less loud instrument that is playing. And the visual representation of those differences represents what we hear in our ears as music. When you see me make that animation of these different loops going in and out, it is a visual representation of the music of time and the music of life. These are patterns that sustain life. They are non-random. So everything from like, this is the sun right here as a sphere that is emitting these loops of time. Let's say one loop is big, it starts to grow. It's ballooning outward over here, and that is from a photon that never actually has an interaction. Light that never actually interacts with matter, light that simply continues on its journey endlessly. That's a loop that always grows. And there are some of these loops that are always growing, but there are some loops that grow. And then the key point is that they contract. The contraction is when you send your information back to the sun through your observership, or I should say better, through the cognitive event of your consciousness experiencing time. And even as you send your cognitive event back to the sun, a tree is also sending its cognitive event back to the sun. A fruit fly, a microbe, a giant alive creature, redwood tree, or something very, very large. Each scale of magnitude of creature has singularity inside and is experiencing light and is having the cognitive event of light. Let me also have a sip of tea, and then let's talk about light in our environment. Light is all around us in our environment, literally. Light is not only the optical presence that you use as a visual sighted creature to be able to see my face. Light is also the tea that I just drank. That was a bunch of light inside of there. Water is light. Like, Aurora, how can water be light? Because you were there with me when I said tea, because it's like, okay, well, leaves are photosynthesis, right? They're catching little photons, turning it into matter on leaves. Your cognitive mind can do that, but like, water, how's water light? Water is light in the folding of the fabric of space-time that represents the topological pattern of how molecules are fit together. So you have the hydrogen and the oxygen that comes together to form water, and the patterns of how space-time is curved on a microscopic level are the patterns of light, the information. In order to represent information or intelligence in the world, it is represented sometimes through polygons or forms, formfulness. So information can be held in the symbolic, but sometimes direct, non-allegorical structure of the fabric of space-time. The oscillations of this fabric of space-time and consciousness, as these loops balloon outward, contain information. The tiny, tiny, tiny wrinkles of the fabric of space-time and consciousness that literally cause atoms to relate together, to bond, and to create forms of complex matter and molecules is also light. So we're going to talk more in the next couple of weeks about those very, very micro miniature levels of the folding of the fabric of space-time. For right now, let's work on this larger macroscopic level. Let me also teach to you that, or clarify, you receive light directly from the sun and the stars. That's one loop. But also, you receive light from those organisms that are lateral or parallel to you. So each one of you, like you're standing here on the planet, a tree is next to you. You are both addressing the sun and the stars are literally emitting light that both you and the tree are both ingesting. And the light that comes to you is a customized diet. That's exactly what you need in terms of information for your cognitive journey in each moment. And it is a different diet than the tree. Even though you're there in front of the same sun at the same moment, you're each getting your own selective nutrients. And the key point is you are also relating to one another. So you have a balance. And this is really, really going to influence your mind as you're comprehending more on an intellectual basis about what ascension is, because ascension is very much entering into this world of pure light where you have what could be considered an infinite budget. You are part of this world of light and you're directly connected to the source that emanates light. And also we are sharing light with one another laterally. So for example, if you are standing next to a tree, the tree, I should draw it for you, but first I'll say it with words. The tree is beaming light at you. It is not merely reflecting light. As I have spoken dispassionately, that light can bounce off of an object and then hit your eye. And this is mostly how we're comprehending this in the former linear model. I'll say it and then I'll draw it because I keep on wanting to draw. It's too much at once. Here's the sun. It comes in the linear model. It comes to a tree. Here's the tree. And then the tree in this old model bounces some colorful light off of its leaves into your eye. Boom, boom, boom. And then you have an event. You're like, oh, look at that. I'm seeing a tree. But what is really happening is the tree is beaming light towards you as its own cognitive event, even as it is also beaming consciousness to the sun and making its own loop grow smaller. Time for pictures. Pictures help. Pictures help. The words are very, very hard. It's very hard for me to make these translations. All right, so the first thing is let's draw the sun. I need fatter lines. Here we go. And then let's draw a tree. In all of my drawings going forward, these little broccoli shapes will always be, this is supposed to be a tree. I know. Well, I didn't even know about what kind of tree this is. And then I will always make, this represents you, the observer. I always make these little blue kind of, almond shaped eyes. This is supposed to be your eyeballs with the center and your little eyelashes here. All right. So first of all, each one of these aspects has singularity at its center. Objects not drawn to scale. The sun has singularity. The tree has singularity. You have singularity. And, if we were to refer to some of the things that I teach about in my Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans class, you also would comprehend accurately all of these objects are toroidal fields. Like this is the sun's heliosphere, object not drawn to scale. This is actually like so big that it encompasses all planets all the way out to Pluto, right? This is also object not drawn to scale, but you have a big giant energy field like this all around you. And then also the tree is a beautiful living allegory because its trunk is in the midline, right where these, center points come together. So when you go and hug a tree, you're literally right inside of its beautiful energy field. All of these you all have the same shaped body. What I'm trying to say with, I'm in doing the worst job, but even though you think that all of these types of organisms have differently shaped bodies, they actually all have the same shape, which is singularity at the center and then the toroidal energy field around there. Okay, so focus on the things that you have in commonality, these other creatures. I'm drawing for you the old model, former comprehension of how we would look at light. We would say, well, this beam of light comes from the sun, and then it comes over here to this plant. The plant interacts with that light. The light, some of it becomes part of the plant and goes on its photosynthesis journey and becomes leaves over here, but some of it doesn't get absorbed by the plant. Some of it bounces off of the surface of the leaves and bounces over here to this person's eyeball, goes inside of there. And then, of course, we could draw a little brain. Wait, get a brain color. Where's a brain color? We'll make it orange. There's like a little orange blob behind your here. That's your brain. And then, you have a cognitive event. Here's the light that's flowing around inside of your brain. And then what do I teach in class? I teach that then you have a transmission of consciousness that relates to the sun that says, hey, I just saw a thing. And let's even draw it. Like, I just saw a thing. This is the thing that I saw. Here's a little tiny tree. I saw a little tiny tree. It's in my brain now. And then you are going to transmit that concept that you saw a tree and what it looked like and what it felt like to the sun. This is valid. This is not invalid. All the things that I just shared with you are accurate according to your perspective of being a person standing on the sidelines, watching the game, but not being an actual experiencer or a player on the playing field or, running while you're carrying the football. I'm not good with sports analogies, so please go really easy on me with that one. Let's now draw, wait, I'm going to keep that little triangle. I'm going to keep this love triangle here. Let me now draw path of light. and what is going on, let's say, in a more expansive, accurate way. Because that's valid, but it's not the whole story. Let's look at it in a new way. So this is what's actually going on. Here's the sun. Just give me a moment while I do my little drawings. Here's the singularity, the center, all right? And then here's you. Ooh, this is your eyeball. There's no space between you and the sun. You guys overlap. And then let's also draw the beautiful tree. There's the tree. You guys all overlap. And there is no space in between any of you. Now let's talk about what it looks like when a photon interacts with you and with the tree. I'm already going too fast for you guys. You must have questions. Ask questions, I will respond. But I'll do this, then I'll respond to any questions. Because I can feel you, and I'm kind of reaching out telepathically. I'm like, how are these guys doing? Like, how are these guys? Are they huffing, puffing, sweating? Do you guys have more energy in you to be able to comprehend this? Okay. So the first thing is, let's draw the photon. Here, the photon never leaves home. The photon is home in its pajamas. But you know what does happen is there is an event that is this journey of light from the sun to the tree. That's this event. And I am drawing it as if it is a line. But please know that it's not, a dog's ear or a mouse's ear or something like that. This is really meant to represent fabric that is more like a ribbon that has, depth and width to it, but it's not just a plain line, so you can kind of see it's curved around like that. All right, but just for the ease of diagramming and to kind of understand things better, I'm going to erase a lot of that junkola, so that way you can see what I'm talking about. So that's one interaction, photon to tree. And then let's draw a smaller one, tree to eyeball. So if this one over here is like, very, very long, photon had to do a long journey to go from sun to tree, but the journey from tree to eye is not that long. That's why I drew this one as shorter. And in both of these instances, it is a finite loop, and it gets smaller when the tree communicates to the sun and it says, hey, this thing just happened, and this gets smaller. This edge comes in closer. And then when you see the tree, you, also communicate to the sun, and this thing gets smaller. So you have the outgrowth or ballooning, largening of these things. And then you have the contraction and smallening of these things. And those are balanced aspects of this harmonic music of what light is creating. And the sun and the stars are learning through this process. So this is more than just you as an optical creature navigating your environment. The very survival, most reductionist way of interpreting this, to be able to say, we need to be able to see where we are and say, like, how far away is this orange from my face so I can grab something off the tree, and then I can get the fruit, and then I can stick it in my mouth and I can eat it and stay alive. Like, it's very reductionist. Light is allowing us to do that, yes, but light is so much more. Light is a cognitive, self-aware, sentient process that we are experiencing. We are experiencing it with other organisms too. So the tree has a relationship to light, you have a relationship to light, and you have a relationship to the tree, and the tree has a relationship to you. But it is not shaped like the triangle as we have perceived it in the past. It is actually shaped like these loops. And this also becomes very, very difficult to use with linear language, because I'm already stressing you. I'm going to ask you in future classes to move beyond this way of perceiving in the linear way, because you're going to have to understand that in order for that light to bounce, if like the light is coming from the sun in the old-fashioned way of looking at things, and then it hits the tree and it bounces off of a leaf and it hits your eye, but that leaf doesn't exist yet. because you haven't observed it yet. It doesn't exist yet. That light bounced off of something that doesn't even exist yet and somehow made it to your eye. And then your eye looked at it and said, there's a thing there that exists. None of that works in a linear sense. So that's why there is a inner conflict that might be difficult to resolve as I'm presenting this information to you. I don't want you to inwardly harumph or be inflamed about it. I want you to kind of like laugh about it and be like, okay, like that is interesting. We'll find a way to comprehend this more. So now pulling up my notes again, which is what I lost before, which I'm very, very distressed that I had to go through that whole energy draining thing. Now I'm going back to where my notes are. My goodness. Now I'm going back to where my notes are. It ain't easy, kid. Good. Okay. Okay. So all of the ideas, so my thing is shaking, all of the ideas of like you're going to build a rocket ship and you're going to fly from point A to point B, like all of those ideas melt away into obsolete inconsequentiality when you start to think about light and what light really is. When you get into the alignment with light flowing directly towards you, you will not want to build a clank clank metal spaceship. So building a clank clank metal spaceship is for the previous inadequate linear viewpoint of looking at the world to be able to say, with my eyes, which are binocular, and I'm here on the surface of Earth, and I'm perceiving light as if it is something external to me, and I'm seeing that there are these different origin points of light in the sky. What would it be like to build a clank clank metal spaceship and to fly from this point over here to this point over here? But as I am bringing light and information to you that gives you a different viewpoint, you're going to start to see that that would be a futile task or a nonsensical task. The fabric of space-time is really a story. People look at it as if it is a distance to traverse. Even that is a comprehension story that people have made up in order to talk to themselves about where light must have come from. You see that light has apparently moved from the sun star to your eye, and you make a story in your mind that says it must have moved from all the way over there to all the way over here. Therefore, there must be some space in between me and where it came from. But there is actually not space in between you and where it came from. There is a story, and that story is a narrative. That narrative is what the loop and the fabric of space-time is. And that narrative is also what the photon you are experiencing as you are on the journey. It's a narrative, and the narrative is constantly being explored, refined, and upgraded depending upon the interactions, the complex interactions with other organisms, and the level of perceived success, which would be whether it leads to continued longevity of the system and coherence, where there's a balance to all of this. Because I will tell you that so the sun and the stars are constantly emitting these time loops and contracting these time loops. And each time they do that, they grow in wisdom and things make more sense and they are more organized and more intelligent. Then they begin to emit the pattern in a new way. It's like saying, I have played it as a musician once and I didn't do that great and I made some wrong notes. I will play it again until I do it great and there's no wrong notes. Well, the sun and the stars are very much in this continual effort of becoming the best musicians they can be. And maybe that is also a much needed upgrade to your viewpoint and your perspective as well. There has been a little bit of adoration going on in our world from the perspective of being a material being to look at a ball of consciousness that is pure light and to have the expectation that it's made this level of attainment to be made out of pure light, that it must somehow be perfect or all-knowing or not able to make mistakes. And although being a sun, a star, or an emitter of this type of cosmic music is a position of huge responsibility, I don't think that we can presume that those organisms or creatures are infallible. In fact, I think that the loving and accurate perspective on all of this, I told you, is to see it as a work in progress and to see the sun and the stars as being continually upgrading what they are sending out in light of our experience and our responses back. And you can comprehend then that the sun and the stars are learning, you as consciousness are learning, other organisms are learning. And instead of blamefulness or disappointment, if the world is not perfect, and kind of like going around and be like, who didn't do their job and whose job is it to do this and whose job is it to do this, which, is very, very fair from a certain level. You can look at it from another level, which is to say, how does this whole entire project need to be changed, shifted, and upgraded in order for it to achieve its levels of eternal, frictionless, divine perfection? And that's what you're doing. You're here contributing to that upgraded levels of perfection, even as the sun and the stars are doing the same thing. So I think that that's a more balanced viewpoint, and that this also is part of moving from being materialistic, linear, and less mature into being non-materialistic or pure energy. You're made of pure light. You are more evolved, and you're able to comprehend where the flaws in the system or the weaknesses of the system come from, and then what you need to do in order to contribute or help the system to be more divine and more perfect. I'm going to check my notes more. I'm going to check the chat more, but I want to talk to you now about the ultimate, like where you're going with all of this, because I know I just gave you a lot. You will need to kind of internalize and recalibrate with this. Watch the very, very first whiteboard lesson that I have, because it will help you to kind of go through the mental muscles of seeing, or even better, watch the whiteboard. And then as your additional homework, please go out tonight into the night sky, presuming that you live in a place where it is safe and it's not too light polluted and you can actually see the stars, and look up at the stars and start to think about what the fabric of time space would be shaped like if you took all of those stars from all of these different places where they are and you started to coalesce them and overlap them all on top of each other. That's your first mental exercise. Then you get that primary drawing that I'm giving to you. And then if you can stretch your mind muscles a little bit further, start to comprehend what the fabric of space-time would be shaped like as you are gathering together all of those seemingly disparate parts to be condensed and focused. It means that the areas in between them where you would send a clank metal spaceship actually are these types of loops. And these loops are stories. Like if you saw me here right now, you'd be like, this is the story of Aurora. There is an implied journey. Like if today is May 14th, it means like I was around on May 13th and the 12th and the 11th. I was somewhere. I made it here somehow, right? But that's an abstraction. They're abstractions. They're non-literal. A lot of these narratives are abstractions. They are not literal, and they're implied. And it is not necessarily something that is tangible and accessible to you in your five senses reality. Wait, so check my notes and I have to tell you about the bullet train. Bullet train. So also, okay. When you look up at the sky and you perceive each one of these emitters of light, these origin sources of light, please know that you're looking at a brain. Please know that you're looking at the direct equivalent of a series of neurons, and that each one of those stars is really part of a cohesive mind state that is thinking thoughts. And then also, just to reiterate who I am as Aurora, defined on the level of a pure waveform, like beyond my physical embodiment here that I am doing in order to be able to bring you this information, because it's very hard for you to hear the stars right now. But I'm an impulse on the stars. So when you have all of these different stars and you have impulses in between them where they relate to one another, what you have is like a pattern. And you can have a pattern that is me, that's my pattern. You can have a pattern that is different than me, that is another pattern. I'm a thought form, I'm a light entity. That is a specific pattern of light as it is flowing between these particular stars. So I'm not the only pattern in existence. There are many patterns, and I'm not the only valid pattern. Like I am a valid, meaning coherent, having longevity, being able to have existence. My math is good. I have existence. I continue to exist. But there are many that are invalid patterns that do not lead to light, to life. Just like you can have the attempted conception between sperm and egg, but not every attempt leads to an actual baby. You can comprehend that not every thought pattern leads to life. Not every thought pattern is equally valid in terms of being able to be sustained and have an eternal sense of self. So some songs have a staying power, and they're out there reverberating and playing and bouncing around as signals throughout this larger mental infrastructure of pure light. And some signals are not valid, and they do not have longevity, and they do not have coherence. And that is really the test or the parameters. Like, how do you know it's good music? How do you know how these loops should be shaped? How do you know whether if it's a work in progress, things are getting better or things are getting worse? And the answer is if it sustains life, if it keeps going, then the math is correct. And this is not a trial and error type of thing because we're dealing with life here. So you don't just want to be like, let's randomly throw things together and see if it works, or will it be like a complete monster? Like, no, you want to know ahead of time whether something will be generative and whether it will sustain life. And that's also why I'm wearing this dress. The patterns of harmonics help you to know if you are doing things right. Do not randomly stab at the piano keyboard and hope that you will make music. No, of course not. You must know how to read music and know how these things fit together. You have an innate sense of how these things fit together so that way it continues. Okay. So yeah, then I'll read from my notes because sometimes I don't do that good of a job speaking, but sometimes I wrote it much better a long time ago. Okay, so wait. To emphasize, and the stars network is similar to a neural network, and every star is part of a larger consciousness that has impulses that bounce from place to place. All right, valid. And the emphasis is that all of these stars are connected and that all light is connected. Big stuff there, and all consciousness is connected. So, we've already got the singularity as a connection point between all organisms and really all matter. But now you're looking at light and comprehending that all light is connected. If you dove into one photon, you would find the story of all light within that one photon. When you start to get onto the path of light and you are part of this interconnected network, you are part of an ecosystem of light. And we will talk about this in subsequent weeks as well. So I'm planting seeds, and we'll re-emphasize later that in that ecosystem of light, it is not necessary to have the severe boundaries that I'm always talking about and teaching about, both behaviorally and certainly, in helping people in sessions and in guiding people in their lives, in my own life. Gotta have boundaries, right? These are lessons for what it is like to be in the individuated realm of materialism. But when you get onto the path of light, and when you are made of light and moving at light speed and beyond, you don't have to have those boundaries, because all light everywhere is you. You are all light everywhere. And so it's very different. You do not have to have an individuated bank account the way that here you have an individual bank account of your energy as opposed to other people's energy or other organisms' energy. And in the real difficulty that you're walking through ascension right now is how much do you share with others versus how much do you keep for yourself? And also, what I said to you that is relevant, each one of us has a mandate or a requirement to be connected directly to the sun or the stars. This is your tendril of attention. Connect your mind directly to the sun, your mind directly to the sun. So the job is not, or the goal is not for you to connect to me because I've got a connection to the sun. It's like saying like, I'm rich, right? I show you my diamond ring, my Herkimer diamond ring. I'm like, sorry, I'm so silly, but sometimes I'm like, yep, I'm very, very rich. But with energy, I'm very, very wealthy, but I don't want you to connect to me. I want you to connect to the sun and be wealthy in your own right. And what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm like, nope, I have just for me and you have just for you, and we will never intermingle? No, because if that was true, I would never observe you or interact with you. I interact with the tree. The tree is beaming green energy at me, and I'm receiving it. The tree is a millionaire of energy. I'm a millionaire of energy. And still, the tree is beaming energy towards me, and I am beaming energy towards the tree. There is a balance that we need to figure out as we are in this transitionary level of getting to light speed and levels of pure attainment. But when you're on the path of light and you're at light speed and you've reached your attainment, you don't have to have those same levels of balance because everybody has an infinite amount of energy. No one has any motivation to take extra energy, like infinity plus one from someone else or something like that, or amass it, collect it all for themselves without wanting to share it for others, or there would be no deficit. You would never go without energy. The rules of energy and energetic economy change and shift completely when you make it to that level. So some of the things that you've learned here are transferable job skills, where you're like, yep, I learned about this, this, and this. But then some of the things that you learned here are not transferable job skills, because when you level up to your next job of being on the path of light, everything will be done really, really differently, especially energetic budgets. But you're not there yet. So on the journey, you have to have strong boundaries. But I'm describing to you and bringing you on this mental, hypothetical journey, so that way you know what it will be like when you're a part of the ecosystem of light. Yeah, you don't have to be like, well, you sent me $10 worth of light, and I'm going to send you $10 worth of light back. You don't have to count every penny. What you do need to do, however, is to maintain your own formfulness, which is your own individuation. So the analogy that I use is a garden hose. The garden hose is made of light. It's made of matter. The water is made of light. It's made of these molecular bonds. And it is being used to, of course, transport water from point A to point B so we can have life and everything like that. We don't want the light that is the garden hose to be dissolved by the light that is the water, because otherwise the water won't get to where it needs to go. You are the garden hose. We don't want you to lose your integrity and dissolve. We want you to be an effective container for light that maintains your integrity, even while you recognize you're in a sea of light, an ocean of light, and your job is to carry and transmit light from not point A to point B, but from experiencer to another experiencer, or from consciousness to consciousness, or from cognitive awareness to cognitive awareness, to have an interaction on that level. So this is not an abnegation of your individuality, or like getting rid of your personality, or like somehow wiping you away and erasing the you out of existence. This is not eradicating you out of existence. When you reach light speed and beyond, you maintain your own integrity as a container, even while you recognize how much you are connected to the everythingness. And you also carry and transmit aspects of yourself that are the everything to other aspects of yourself that are smaller parts of what you're doing. And I know that I'm asking you to juggle a lot in your mind, and the words are sometimes torturous to try to get this out and get this to you. But you can have a completely different level of experience when you're in the band. When you're in the band, you're not just here auditioning. It's like, wow, you can get relaxed. You can completely not have to worry about a lot of things because you're always gonna have what you need. I was going to say you're never going to go hungry. You're never going to be concerned about being in a deficit. But in order to reach those levels, your world must be transformed. So now we're going to talk about the bullet train to infinity. And I want to make sure, yeah, I think I got, yeah, good. Okay. Okay. Well, another important thing. So um, when you're looking at the night sky for your homework, please know that each beam or photon of light that's here comes to you, that is coming into your eye, is customized for you and for your viewpoint. That really each sun or star is emitting shells and waves that make a dense, completely overwhelming totality of light. If you saw all of it at once, like you would not be fried like frying an egg, you would be overwhelmed by information. I joke about these classes liquefying your brains, but you guys do know what it feels like when something is just too much. You're just like cognitive overload. That's it. Time for me to watch cartoons. You understand? Or like, I need a break. I can't take this. It's very, very fair because you have a limited viewpoint, a limited neurology. You're a limited container, but you're getting to be unlimited through your efforts. So keep going with your efforts. Um, 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 each portion of light that you receive is customized to you. And we would say that it is nutritively designed by like your own personal chef of light that is giving you exactly the perspective that you need in order to fuel yourself as a spiritual athlete and grow the mind muscles that you need to level up and rise higher and continue in your consciousness growth, evolution, and education. And so when I received this information by looking at the stars and perceiving light directly, I was like, yum, that is exactly the nutrition that I need in order to learn about these things and grow. And then also my innate sense of my personality. I'm always like, hooray, this food is so good. I can't wait to share it with others. And the challenge is always how to translate these abstractions into a palatable food that is good for you and also good for your muscles and also what you need to hear in your particular journey. So of course I'm like the I don't know, I'm not like the ultimate chef. I'm like the person who gets ingredients from the chef and then I'm assembling things into a nice meal together for you. That's what this class is. So it's light. This everything that I'm sharing with you right now, as I'm like stumbling over my words and doing a very, very bad job. I'm joking, self-deprecating here, but I'm doing my best. All of these concepts come from the chef and they are enormous, sometimes overwhelming in their complexity. And so what I do is I try to find visual metaphors, diagrams, allegories, telepathic metaphors, things that you're familiar with in your mind that you can connect to, and then ways of being able to help you to know that this information is available. When you connect your own mind to the sun and the stars, you will get all of your own direct cognitive experiences. And I think that you will really have a commonality with what I'm saying. You'll be like, oh, this is what Aurora was talking about, but you'll have your direct experience of it. So I'm in many ways describing the taste or flavors of food that I would like for you to experience directly even as I'm trying to transmit the food directly to you. So when you stand in front of the stars or the sun, that light is customized to you to teach you about the world. And then that light is not just bouncing randomly, not off of the surface of a leaf, and also not around as cognitive experiences, that light doesn't get stuck or fall. And I joke about that too. There was a very, very old Saturday Night Live cartoon that was this little character, and he would fall down. And he'd go like, "Oh no!" Like, "I fell down. Oh no!" And they'd all say, "Oh no, he fell." No, you're not like Mr. Bill falling down. Light does not fall. So let's talk about this photosynthesis. We're going to get into photosynthesis more in coming weeks. So this is intro, but we also need to talk about the bullet train of infinite speed. So with photosynthesis, science describes it as if there's like a random occurrence of all of these tons and tons of millions of photons that are flying all around. And then one of them happens to fall on the surface of a particular leaf randomly, girl, and then happens to go through this incredibly complex procedure to be able to be photosynthesized into matter that we know as glucose. Glucose is solidified light. Can't wait to teach you the class all about glucose, because it will transform your relationship to food and to sugar, which is very positive, actually. No, the photon makes a choice. The photon, again, in my diagram, is at home in its comfy pajamas at singularity. It is creating a narrative structure of what it is experiencing very, very intentionally. I don't have batteries for my remote control, so I just have to pause for one moment. A photon does not fall randomly out of its bed and out of its comfy pajamas onto a random leaf. It goes there very specifically. The photon makes choices. Big, important stuff for you to know about. Photons make choices. Volitional. I have not expressed enough to you guys how light is volitional. Like, I'm volitional. I was just thirsty. I needed some tea. My dog is volitional. She goes outside. She's digging. She's eagerly hunting for gophers. Light has volition. It does not randomly either be flung off of the surface of a star or fall gravitationally and be in a relationship that it doesn't want to be in. It does not get caught. It does not get stuck. So science might have described light getting stuck in your eye. Like, it's going to go on this journey, right? A star that might be however many light years away, 35 million light years away, very far. And it's going to go 35 million light years. And then that starlight is going to reach your eye, and you're going to look at it tonight. And then it's going to get stuck in your retina. And science talks about it as kind of like wah wah, like the end of everything. Like that photon was free until you came along and had to look at it and it gets stuck in your eye. It's like, no, that is not what is happening at all. Far from it. The photon is joyfully and joyously being expressed on its journey, or having an experience of its journey to come and interact with your eye. Not a punishment, not random. So the sense of punishment and randomness, I think, speaks to some of the traumas that each one of you has been through, as feeling like you are a consciousness. You might feel out of control in your own life journey. You might feel like, how in the world did I end up here? I must have fallen. Oh no. Or I must be being punished. I fell into somebody's eyeball and I got stuck. I fell into the wrong world. I got stuck. No, not on a random journey, and you're not being punished. But also too simplistic, according to some of the, new age claptrap that I rail against in shadow work and things like that. Simplistic shadow work that says, oh, well, if anything bad has ever happened to you in your life, like, clearly you created it and made it happen to yourself. No, also not no, because you know why? Work in progress. Work in progress. where you are here to learn, and so too are the sun and the stars and all light everywhere, here to learn and to create the optimum format that actually does not contain death and disease. So the death, disease, and harmfulness that you've experienced and been traumatized by has been part of the wrong notes of reality that you did not come here to play and experience. So you're here on mission and on a purpose. Some of what you're experiencing is imperfect or has been subverted. It is very much your co-creative partnership with the emanators of light and you as an experiencer of light to rectify and fix those patterns. And also, I always say this, spoiler alert, you become the sun, which is to say that now in your journey, you are in the viewpoint of being like an audience member, and you experience light as the same way you would sit in an auditorium and waves of music flow through you and you're listening and you're like, it sounds so amazing. I love it. And then the musicians are done and you stand up and you say, hooray, hooray, musicians, good job, good job. And then you think, one day I would like to learn to play like that. I would like to learn to play the violin, or I would like to learn to play the tuba. And we can make jokes about whether anybody has a fantasy about becoming a great tuba player, but I'm sure you're out there. And then at a certain point you study and you learn music, and then yes, you can become an excellent tuba player and play with the symphony of life. You become the sun, you become the stars, you become an emanator of these narratives, making things happen. So the path of light going to a leaf for photosynthesis is not random, is very, very specific. The path of light coming from a star and reaching your retina is also very, very specific, not random. And that even in this specificity, there still might be aspects of this mathematical complex tapestry that have not been fully worked out yet, that are not perfect. This is why we have been experiencing errors or noise instead of pure signal, instead of 100% divine perfection, and that we are in a process of rectification and optimizing timelines in order to make things better. So I'll get to your questions in a moment, because what I wanted to talk about was, so photosynthesis, the unlikelihood of a photon finding its way through the labyrinth of mechanical and biomechanical and electrical processes that are needed to happen for photosynthesis. And I'll guide you through that in a whole separate teaching, because it's very overwhelming, I can tell, for me to be able to make you work your muscles so much all in one day. But that is the greatest unlikelihood. It is the greatest unlikelihood that the photon successfully is transmuted into matter or metamorphoses or becomes something that we perceive as physicality stuff with our five senses. And all of this totally relates to your journey of re-energizing yourself from matter physicality back to light, which is what this journey of ascension is. As you vroom, vroom, rev up and accelerate who you are and move faster, that you are moving from a being who is matter, which is slowed down light, into someone who is a being who is moving at a very, very fast rate. And so, okay, let's talk about the bullet train of infinity. Let's imagine that this pen is the bullet train of infinity, and it goes by so fast. It's moving at light speed. It's even moving at light speed and beyond. It can release any of the teachings that are coming from the work of Albert Einstein, the early 20th century quantum physicist. He gave a lot of upgrades to humanity, but he also gave you a glass ceiling, the limit of the speed of light. Inherent to some of his teachings is the concept that you can't move faster than the speed of light, and or that matter cannot be accelerated back to light because it would take an infinite amount of energy. So it is looked at as this impossible thing, like wah wah, like you won't get getting back to light, kind of, which is it's a perspective from the materialist world of entropy, that you started out as a hyper-organized system and you're losing energy, slowing down, getting worse and worse and worse. At this level, you're kind of bad, but not totally bad. And then at a certain point, you'll be like kaput, which is the Bose-Einstein condensate, zero energy, total density. We'll do states of matter too, in subsequent weeks. But I'm here to help you to remove that glass ceiling. Just imagine open, expansive, blue sky reaching all the way up through your mind now, because you absolutely can re-attain the speed of light and beyond. So imagine that you have done that successfully. You are accelerated to the speed of light and beyond. You're on the bullet train. The bullet train is going along and it is moving at the speed of light. And you're drinking a cup of tea on the bullet train. Your cup is moving at the speed of light and beyond. And the liquids in there are moving at the speed of light and beyond. All of the people around you and all of their books, all of their Walkman, and anything that they're listening to their music on, everything is moving at the speed of light and beyond. And there's actually no thing outside of the bullet train, no thing that is not moving at the speed of light and beyond. In order for you to be at the speed of light, there is a no thing that is not at the speed of light. Another way of comprehending this is to say that maybe if I say you're on this train, you imagine that there is a train station over here, that someone is standing here on the train station and they are watching as you are whizzing by, and they see you sipping a cup of tea and you're kind of like, see you suckers. And he's standing there being like, look at those guys going by so fast. Like, what did they do to get so fast? And who do they think they are? But that is not happening. There is actually no observer outside of this position of being at the speed of light. When you attain this totality and you are moving at, let's say, infinity fastness, there is nothing around you that is not moving at infinity fastness. My words are correct, but I still don't know if your brain is getting it, because there is no thing there. There is nothing there. There is no thing there. There are no things there. There is nothing there. There is no there, and there are no things there. I feel so silly when I say these things, but I think you're getting it. No, there's nothing there. And so that's big stuff. Really, the only things that exist in that level of reality are the things that are on the bullet train of infinite speed. That everything else does not exist. And when you're at infinity speed, you are infinite light, infinite knowing, infinite intelligence, infinite information. You're very, very smart in that moment. And also infinite heat, because we're going to talk about this in future classes, about how heat is a form of light and heat is a form of intelligence. And infinite heat is infinite intelligence. And that the things that represent the opposites or the non-presence of those qualities that I just talked about would be non-sentience, coldness, no motion, no volition, no consciousness or self-awareness or desires, non-being. That is non-existing. So in this moment now, you're transitioning from being a materialistic individual in a matter world into being a completely connected, boundaryless being of pure light in a world of pure light. You have had to develop boundaries because you've had to be making a distinction in the refinery of existence between the aspects of self that continue onward and get on the train of infinity and are going infinitely fast and are infinitely hot, and the aspect of self that do not, or who do not. It could be aspects of your own person. It could also be generalized characteristics, or it could be entire organisms or organizations. A lot of thought forms, behavior patterns, ways of being, potentials for behavior, and actual people and organisms do not exist. And how do they not exist? They do not exist because they are non-being. So better to say they are not, they unbe, they non-exist. And they non-exist because existence has been rescinded from them. And existence is part of moving through time. They are no longer moving through time, but you are moving through time and you are experiencing infinitely fast movement through time. We'll go through this again. Don't worry. This has been a very, very good calisthenic workout for your brain. I'll do more, but let me get to all of your questions and comments. And I appreciate every time when people talk and share their questions and comments. Aurelia, way back in the beginning, says it definitely helps us to remember the cosmic infrastructure. Very, very glad for you to be here and glad to give these reminders. And Aurelia also says, thank you guys for understanding that I had so much technical difficulties in getting a simple video to play when I had already prepared it for class. All right, so now Charlie B. And Charlie B is a returning student. Thank you so much for being here through multiple semesters. And I think that you have watched me finding my equilibrium to be able to teach this particular curriculum, and I get better every time. He says, okay, the photon bounces off the leaf, this is in quotes, and into your eye, but the leaf does not exist yet because you did not yet perceive it. And Charlie B says, this actually makes a lot of sense, and it's consistent with how we know photosynthesis works. Science demonstrates the photon travels the most computationally impossible path to grow the leaf. We'll talk about this. And says this is consistent with the photon experiencing many possibilities, but manifesting the leaf to become a part of the leaf. Yes, yes, yes. So let me sip my tea and then affirm and expand on what you said. Thank you. So Charlie B, returning student, knows exactly what I'm talking about here. The most computationally difficult or impossible path. So this is when the light actually reaches a leaf. It goes to a chloroplast. The chloroplast is a tiny little subcellular organelle that's in plants in their skin. And then from the chloroplast, it must travel to an energy center. It translates from being a photon into being an electron. And that impulse of the electron must travel to the energy center. This is, of course, object not drawn to scale. There are an infinite number of pathways that the electron can take in order to get from point A to point B. Exactly the same way that I have given you in my other class, the time vortex, which is the sense of your life being analogous to the electron. An almost infinite number of possibilities that you can travel from the moment you are born to the moment that you either die or transcend and become pure light. All of these different peripheral selves, different combinations of choices that you can make and of ways that you can move through time. You go through that time vortex, kind of like chopping them down, like wrong note, that wasn't the right one, membrane of death, whoops, wrong one, try again, until you finally hit that correct note, which is the central core timeline, which is how you ding, 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 get to your moment of attainment. Direct analogy to the path of the electron, moving through this incredible labyrinth to be able to get to the energy center. If the electron takes a wrong turn, it loses its energy and it can't get back on track. Womp womp, dead end. So it has to take the most efficient journey to be able to get through there, but it cannot lose energy through trial and error. So this is why you can look at every leaf as if it is a very sophisticated quantum supercomputer, because it is. Every single time this process is happening to make glucose for a plant to be alive and for you to be alive, the electron that was a photon makes the correct choice. Every time, on every leaf. Can your brain even think about how many leaves are in the world right now? And this includes waterborne photosynthesis beings, like, little algae or something like that. How many? How many of this going on? Uncountable. Your brain is liquefying. Good. It happens a lot. It happens inevitably every time. And the likelihood of that happening is basically an incalculable unlikelihood of goodness, that this is happening every single time. So this is more accurate, to put it into better words, than humans have created quantum supercomputers. that are able to do these types of computations, where it's like, okay, there's an uncountable number of possibilities. Which one is the possibility that's actually the right one? And what the computer does is it kind of explores every single possibility at the same time in order to figure out which is the one right answer. And it does all of those things simultaneously, which is why it appears to be so fast to the linear mind. And then humans say, hooray, like that's a smart supercomputer. But it sometimes loses a few electrons. The human created supercomputers are not as accurate as a leaf. A blade of grass outside is more accurate than and reliable human created supercomputers. And that this happens with every single plant that is photosynthesizing the entire time. So when I tell you, like, take refuge in thinking about light, I do this. I drive safely, but when I'm driving along, I look at the trees that are lining the road and all of the grass that's underneath the trees. And I literally put my mind's eye on all of those processes that are happening. And what is happening is such a level of accuracy and complexity that it is positive, uplifting, and it is overwhelming in a good way. It blocks out all of the noise. It blocks out all of the errors, the pooties, the imperfections of the system. What I'm encouraging you for the next several weeks of this class is to walk along in a world of wonder, recognizing that you are a miracle contained within a miracle, and really cognitively being in gratitude for the expression of divine perfection as it continues to unfold. Every single one of these trees, every single leaf is a complex biological supercomputer that makes zero mistakes. The likelihood of that is very, very small, and yet it is happening, and that's the world that you inhabit. So also calibrate to that. Calibrate to be like, well, if all of that incredible unlikelihood can happen and it's positive and good, what other amazingly unlikely and complex things can happen and miraculous things can happen in our world? All right. Take refuge in the path of light. Think about light and its perfection and the unlikelihood and its accuracy and its intentionality in the system that you are within. And know that that is a representation of very, very positive potentials in your own life. So let's talk a little bit about glucose, and I'll get more into photosynthesis. Again, like, I won't overwhelm you, but for many years I was low carb and no sugar. So you might have a sense like me of like, oh, like sugar's not your friend or glucose isn't that good. So please know that glucose in your body is a positive thing. It is the physical representation or a molecule that literally represents light in physical matter. And to embrace it, even if you eat fats or carbohydrates, as you are metabolizing your foods in your body, even if they are not, sorry, I said the wrong thing. So rewind and begin again. Even if you are eating only proteins or fats with no carbohydrates that might contain glucose or other sugar chains, when you metabolize your food, it does turn into, at a certain point, these different glucose, sugar forms in your body, and that is positive and something that you want to have happening. And that this glucose is directly related to the process of photosynthesis. Glucose is a storage molecule shape for light when it comes into matter. And that these glucose molecules and then chains of glucose molecules in the photosynthesis process, that is what is known as cellulose. And that is what makes wood. So you can have trees, not just trees, but really any kind of plant that has a structure and a stem that stands up. So in order for us to have something more complex than just like a moss, that grows on the surface of a stone or something like that, if you want to have anything, even a little tiny flower that stands up, what you have to start having are these complex chains of glucose, like a train car. the glucose chains fit together, and those glucose chains create cellulose, and the cellulose creates fibers, and the fibers create the armature or the structure that hold my back went up, that holds plants and flowers up, so that way you can have more complex life. All of these things that I'm talking about are about creating greater levels of complexity so that you can have more complex life. You're like, why learn all about things? Why be a work in progress? So that you can create greater levels of complexity so that you can have more complex life, so that you can evolve, so that more and greater things can actually happen. So let's go to another question over here. Kim Rose says, do the stars exist separately, or do they also exist due to observership? How do you relate astrology to our realm has come to understand it? First, I will speak to your question about astrology. So astrology is a template for events that is through your human level of comprehension or filter, where people say, according to the moment of your birth or various different ways of coordinating various different events, according to star positions. But the challenge is that all of the star positions are from the perspective of standing on the earth. You know, like you're standing here, here's home base, right? And then you're looking, quote unquote, out there, and you're seeing all the positions of all these different stars or planets. And yes, there are harmonic perfections that are patterns that are describing what those astronomical bodies are doing. Thank you for that. And it is valid to say that patterns exist, but the patterns that humans are laboring to perceive and to describe are 100% from the human viewpoint. Because if you moved to Jupiter, you'd have a completely different viewpoint of the stars, and your astrology chart would be completely different. And of course, if you were in a different star system, your viewpoint of reality would be completely different. So there is some validity to astrology, but not the levels of validity that many people ascribe to it, because it is not a universal system. It is highly subjective and human-centered or anthropocentric, and it is also ethnocentric, in that there is a Western, quote unquote, astrology, and then an Eastern or a Vedic astrology, even on the same planet. You're looking at the same stars, but you're describing things very, very differently. So it is not universal. So just please know it is not a universal truth, but also please know that these levels of divination can happen through almost any system, that you can divine the truth by looking at the swirls at the bottom of your teacup or chicken entrails or whatever you would like to, because you know why? Because God is a super genius that puts all of these patterns into chicken entrails, or the pattern of leaves as they fall underneath a tree, or cards if you shuffle them and then place them out, or whatever, the I Ching or any of these types of things. These patterns come forward because God is a super genius, and this genius, divine intelligence, is acting through pretty much any available system of moderate randomness. And again, apologies, my voice is tired. We just drink a little bit and then get to your other question. Your other question was, do the stars exist separately? Yes, and the other part of your question, do they also exist due to observership? I'll speak to observership and individuality as two separate aspects of the stars. They are all musicians in the symphony, and they all pass the audition. All of the musicians are really, really good at what they do, but not perfect. But you definitely have to, like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall, kid? Practice, practice, practice. You gotta be good in order to be an actual star in the sky, generating and emitting narratives of time. And so each one is individual, and they also work together. Stars also must be responsible for their emanations or their creations. I talked about that in Lessons with Full Spectrum Humans. Some star systems that might have extremophiles, types of life that might grow up on like planet Lava Monster. Some star would create that with its mind and be like, yep, I'm going to emanate outward the fabric of space-time, ripples in the continuum that are going to be like lava monsters that live on planet lava. And, you know, because it's a thing. Like you can explore that if you want to. If you're a creator, like I'm here in my art studio. If I'm like, okay, I want to paint lava monsters or radioactive spiders or whatever, I can paint that with my mind, but I must take responsibility for my emanations because you can't just paint that into reality and then be like, okay, lava monsters, radioactive spiders, go off there and bite people now, because that is not responsible. So that's why there are firewalls and limitations that are placed in terms of doing those types of consciousness experiments and narrative creation, creature experiments in places where it's like, let those creatures live on planet lava, but don't bring them to other places or let them interact with like planet fluffy bunnies, because the lava monsters will clearly incinerate the fluffy bunnies and then they will have like barbecued bunnies for dinner. The problem with technology is that technology has made it possible for the lava monsters to occasionally interact with and incinerate and eat the fluffy bunny planets, and that's not okay. But the stars themselves must take responsibility for their creatures. So in a perfect system, you would have no technology and you would have the stars naturally creating their weird, fantastic, you know, envisionments and creations. And then they would learn. Why would a star create a planet lava monster? Because it wants to learn about that for some bizarre reason. It's not my style. That's what I do when I look at artwork that you know, is really distasteful, or just, I would be like, that's not my style. I'm like planet rainbow harmonics, right? That's what I would be creating. But what I also recognize is in these forms of art that are not my style, there might be something in it for the artist. There might be something important for that star to create that project, create that form of life, to create that form of experience or narrative structure. There might be something there for the purposes, sorry, I'm so tired, for the purposes of learning, growth, and education. But if a star needs to learn and grow and get educated by creating lava monsters, that's one thing. It's not allowed to send that energy out in a way that's harmful and destructive to everyone else. Because like you can learn your lessons, but you can't hurt everyone else. So the stars, when I say they have earned their way to Carnegie Hall through practice, they have attained their level in a way that cannot be faked. Like if you're a marathon runner, and I have never run a marathon, but of course I would love to aspire to do that one day. Run from point A to point B, 26.2 miles. You earn your muscles, and no one can say that, you know, you've cheated or whatever. It's like you did it. You're there. The stars are there. They did it. They clearly ran the marathon. But it doesn't mean that they're infallible in this realm. Because right now you're in the realm not only of matter, but of mortality. And mortality is its own level of inherent mistakenness, being at a canted angle and going towards the membrane of death, as opposed to being in perfect alignment and only experiencing eternal life. So right now we're in a world where stars are not perfect and where they can even experience mortality events, which would be the death or evolution of a star into a black hole. And I will talk about how black holes relate to this whole entire path of light. So each one of these stars is a light organism, and they are individual and they're responsible to themselves and to their creations. And also they're in a band and they work together and they're responsible to one another. So really aspects of practicing enough to get to Carnegie Hall means not just that you're a good player, but you also have to learn how to integrate your playing with all of the rest of these organisms. And that means even like, how do we deal with the guy that wants to create lava monsters over here? How do you mitigate these different creative styles and personalities? And so that's why we have no technology as a rule, and also organisms seeking their own stratification. So it's like a law of stratification, kind of like salad dressing or specific gravity experiments that you might have done in your science class, fourth grade, where there's different layers like salad dressing, vinegar, mineral oil, other stuff, the layers of reality. So if you are planet Fluffy Bunny, you're at the Fluffy Bunny layer. If you're planet Lava Monster, you're at the Lava Monster layer. And these guys are not supposed to interact. This is in a pristine system. And if you're not in a pristine system, it means there is some technology or something that is making things that would never, flavors that would never come together. And some things do not work, like whatever pickles and chocolate or something like that, that just taste terrible. They would be fine in their own recipes, but don't bring them together. So each emitter of light and of narratives must be responsible to its creations, and the entire organism must be responsible for the entirety of the organism. So in order to pass the audition and become a star, you have to take responsibility. So I was talking about this in some of my final classes from just a couple of weeks ago at the end of the semester. My funny Aurora stories about coiling up the electrical cord when I worked in various different entry level positions. And when you take responsibility, like you go beyond your level of your job, you get a cosmic promotion because the cosmic infrastructure is like, oh, good job. You didn't have to coil that up, but you did. You left it better than you found it. You're responsible and you're ready for something greater. You must take responsibility in order to level up. We presume that the sun and the stars have taken responsibility to the point that they are ready to create life. And literally, all of us are their creations and are their responsibility. There is a thing called collective responsibility. And this is something that you might not have encountered in the very garbage world that you live in, where you actually have the antithesis. I'm sorry to even bring it up here in our beautiful pristine path of light class. But you have these whole organisms. You could think of it like, an army. The army is like full of soldiers, and the soldiers are like, don't blame me. I just take orders. Don't blame me. And the soldiers and the army go through, destroying villages and burning all the fruit trees and everything like that. And each one of them says, like, not my fault, just following orders. And the entire army has a sense of collective irresponsibility because it says, well, it's the organization, it's not me. Don't blame me. It's the organization. It's not me. And even the secretaries are like, I am just the secretary for the organization and I just take notes in triplicate. Don't blame me that the organization is doing this. Or does this sound familiar to each one of you? Government bureaucracies. People work for government bureaucracies. Maybe they're like at the pulpit or something like that. Like some elected leader, and they're like, I blame everybody else but me. I think I'm channeling Bernie Sanders right now. He's like, I blame everybody else but me. It's all them. I'm trying to do good. He's like, collective irresponsibility. No, all of these fat asses. Pardon me, to drink. All of these political class fat asses all need to take collective responsibility, which is to say they're part of a corrupt organization. And although they might be a reformer or have a different proposal, that they are still participating in the very corruption that they propose to be eradicating. So there's collective irresponsibility at many, many levels in your world where there should be the opposite collective responsibility. And collective responsibility would be if Bernie Sanders got up to the pulpit and said, it ain't my fault. I didn't make all this bad stuff happen, but I'm part of the system and I'm here to clean it up and make it better. That's what, on an anthropomorphic level, we need to do. A lot of what I propose here in the Path of Light class is really using levels of pure abstraction to be able to clean up or improve reality. So it is not an escapist fantasy or a denialism. It is a different level of empowerment, really, that happens as you start to accelerate your light metabolism to a much, much faster level. Then you get to be much, much more empowered. So instead of thinking about it like this world is garbage, I'm going to accelerate and zoom like kapow, like fly out of here. And then I'll fly to some elevated fairyland where everything is beautiful, like in the world of make-believe. It's not an escapist fantasy. What is happening instead is through recognizing the imperfection of the world around you as you have been embodied in matter, you are able to accelerate yourself back to light speed. And in that embodiment process, you are rectifying all of the stuff around you that has been the friction or the debris or the detritus. The debris is event structures that are not ideal and that have been slowing you down and slowing everyone else down. So you accelerate as a form of taking self-responsibility, not as a form of escapism, knowing that your acceleration puts you on the magical bullet train where you are the only thing that exists in a state of divine perfection, and that your divine perfection is sustained upon or is interrelated to the non-existence of that which is not perfect and not supposed to be in existence. It's very, I'm grabbing my sculpture over here. It's very flying rainbow lasagna because this shape is about the balanced harmonics of things that are being energized all the way up at this level here and the things that are being de-energized all the way at this level here. And I'll speak to that a little bit too, and then we'll have a break and return next week because you all need to digest all of this. Energy and entropy are very much in the relationship of the things that I'm telling you about. They are the states of matter. And I teach about the states of matter in my other class, but we're going to do states of matter here as it relates to intelligence. Because the states of matter that you know about, like a solid, a liquid, a gas, a plasma, or a Bose-Einstein condensate of superdensity, these are all representations of different degrees of intelligence and different degrees of light. Something that is a frozen ice cube actually has less intelligence in it than something that is boiling water on my kettle in the morning, turning into steam. You have to recalibrate because science will tell you, well, no, a crystalline object, which is what an ice cube is, has more regular arranged molecules than the wild, uncontrolled aspects of steam that are flying all around as it comes out of my tea kettle. That steam is definitely less organized than this ice cube. I'm like, no, steam is actually more intelligent than the ice cube. So what are you talking about? Because the steam is doing a molecular dance that the ice cube is not doing. It is moving fast and in very complex ways that the non-speakers, like if you don't know the language, think are random. Many, many times when the limited viewpoint is looking at a natural phenomenon and saying, it is moving randomly. It is not moving randomly. It is moving in a pattern that is highly intelligent, filled with light, but so complex that it cannot be perceived as pattern. So now every time that you're looking at these motions in the natural world of profound complexity, you must know that there are things that are so complex that it might be beyond your capacity to presume that there is intelligence there. And many of the flaws of the present level of science in your world are because there has been a presumption of non-pattern when it has been a hyper-complex pattern that simply cannot be perceived. And the complex pattern of like water molecules dancing in steam, it's a complex pattern over time, and it is also connected to all water molecules everywhere. So you've got all light connected everywhere, all consciousness connected everywhere, all water molecules connected everywhere. I know this is very, very big. So that's across time, not only like from here to Africa, to Russia, to wherever, the North Pole and the South Pole, yes, but also from the beginning of time to this moment now and onward, yes. So if you weren't there at the beginning of time, and if your eyeball isn't big enough to be able to see everything that has happened since the beginning of time, and then it's also too overwhelming to your brain because your brain is this big, then it can be hard for you to know that these patterns exist. When you accelerate on the bullet train, you're actually not sitting there listening to your headphones. I said your Walkman. Listen to your Walkman headphones or reading a book. You know what you're actually doing? You're reading reality. Because when you're at the level of the speed of light and beyond, it's just like when you increase the frame rate of movie film, and then all of the wonderful details become evident. Like you can literally, if I were to look out at my garden and if I was moving at infinite fast speed, I would see every tiny little ladybug, every movement of every antler, every tiny microorganism in the soil, every moment that a leaf falls down, all of it. And I would be able to process it and know the language and comprehend the music in each moment. And that's in every moment, in every nanosecond. That is how you're experiencing reality. There is an incredible complexity in the embroidery of reality. So right now, you're really only getting is here a tiny fraction of what is available to you in terms of light and information. Come here. Just like when you get energy from the sun or the stars, you're only getting a tiny slice of what they are sending out because they don't want to overwhelm your mind, because you do have a limited brain structure, because you do right now have, limitations that you're working within. So you're a little tiny sprout and you need to be given a little bit of light in the dappled shades, that way you grow. And then as you grow more and more, then you're able to collect, ingest, and process more light. And then as you process more light, you can comprehend things on a much, much larger scale. So yeah, thank you. Cheeky clearly will need something. We will give her some bribes very, very soon, but I'll wrap things up with class. So coming up, so do your homework. Do your homework, look outside. You can interact with the sun, but also interact with the stars. Um, do the consciousness exercises that I'm encouraging you to do. Watch your whiteboards, and I'm going to expand in the coming weeks upon the specifics of glucose. And I'm going to go through the molecular bonds and the process of how those bonds are created. And then we're also going to do combustion. So how basically light becomes matter through the process of photosynthesis. And then how matter, which is glucose in your body, becomes light through your metabolic processes. Because, I'm walking along or driving along and looking at the trees and their leaves as photosynthesis, and that's a miracle. But you have miracles happening right in here all the time. Drink a cup of tea, eat some sugar, walk on a treadmill. You are transforming matter back into light. It is possible. So remove the glass ceiling. Know that you right now are solidified light and you are matter. And know that you will transform again into your ephemeral true nature, which is the nature of light. And in fact, matter and light are these oscillations of the density of light. And I'm going to teach you about combustion. I'm going to teach you about primary light and also other forms of light. So primary light is like the sun, but it also can be a beeswax candle flame or making a campfire out of logs. And then also artificial light, which is I'm pointing at my light bulb over here, or the computer, or other things that would be an incandescent bulb, a fluorescent bulb, an LED bulb. These are all different forms of light. And how did I learn about this? I literally put my tendril of attention on a light bulb because I was learning about light from the sun and the stars, but then I'm like, what about a light bulb? Because I'm telling you, the light is within the sun and the stars, but the light is not inside of the light bulb. Where does the light come from? We will talk about this. We'll learn about the journey of light, where it is flowing from. We're going to learn about electricity as light. We're going to learn about not only optical light, but really the entire electromagnetic spectrum as light, and about how that relates to matter. And we're going to learn about, just as today you learned about the overarching fabric of reality and how it is, I want to say, gathered together into these complex ruffles, and that is creating larger time events. But you're going to learn how even at a tiny, tiny, tiny level, the fabric of space-time has these little dips that then get ironed out, these little almost like where golf balls go into their little divots, these convoluted surface topologies of the fabric of space-time. That is what makes molecules bond together, and that how to bond them and unbond them. Giving you this information is also not just a fun abstraction, although we love fun consciousness exercises. It also is an empowerment, because there's a bug in here. As you learn all of these different things, you're going to be like, I wonder what I can do with this. You're going to be able to do stuff with this. All right. So these are also empowerment teachings where you are learning about what is required to make matter, like what is required to solidify light into matter, what is required to rearrange molecules in order to make matter, what is required to rearrange energy so that the matter is reaccelerated to the point of light. And then how are we using that reacceleration process, which is either combustion or metabolic transformation, like burning glucose or burning a log in a fireplace? How do we reintegrate the light that has been put on hold? Like light is defined by its movingness. It is moving, it is flowing, like water is flowing. Water doesn't just stay stagnant. Electricity is another one. Electricity is always moving. These are natural phenomena that require movement at all time, and you kind of can't stop it. Time is always moving. Time is defined by its flow. That old chestnut of a song where he says, if I could save time in a bottle, because you can't save time in a bottle, because if you stopped time, it would lose its vital quality, the essence of what it actually is. So these things are defined by their movement and by their movingness. There is not a way to stop them in order to keep them. So how do we comprehend that and apply that to our experiences? I know, maybe a bit too much, but that's coming in future classes as well. Sometimes I even stumble over my own words. Okay, Tom's got a question. Oh, this is beautiful. Wait, these are all beautiful comments. Let me say this. Okay, so Brenda says, woohoo! This has been so wonderful and profoundly encouraging for me to be here today. Thank you, Brenda, new student, for this Path of Life class. Aurora, your enthusiasm is palpable and uplifting. All been really mind-boggling, but hugely insightful. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming here into the heavy weightlifters gym where we have like the big giant weights, not being intimidated. Thank you. And thank you for doing your own weightlifting exercises along with us. And Joyce is beautiful, says, I love you, Professor. We'll be absent next week visiting family. Love to Cheeky too. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, as always, everyone, for loving Cheeky. She's right here. Cheeky was tired from the retreat that we did, but she did have a couple of days snoozing in her dog bed, and she's all perked up again. And Tom is here. Beautiful to see you. Says, oh, well, nice. Tom says, perhaps a question for next week. Let's check it out and we'll see. Within context to the FRL sculpture and the path of light, can you expand on the visualization thought experiment of pushing both entropy points of the FRL shape together? I believe you mentioned it would turn into the torus. How does perception of light differ between the torus and the FRL shape? Okay, it is something for next week, but let's not leave everybody hanging like, tune in next week to find out what's going to happen. No, so the answer is, this shape right here is the end result of if we oscillate the torus in a higher dimensional context. And my torus, it's just over here on my shelf somewhere. I could run and get it for you. So these are complements, energy and entropy. If we were to put energy and entropy together, these 2 points would go back together in the middle, and you would have a regular donut shape with one thing in the middle. So we can think of that regular donut shape as either a center that has two capabilities. Sometimes it is on and sometimes it is off. It can be energy or it can be entropy. It can be being or it can be non-being. Or we can think about that torus as vibrating between two positions. When it's in one position, it is in the position of being. And when it's in another position, it is in the position of non-being. And even more profound than that, bringing together entropy and energy in order to create a torus, what we're really doing is resolving duality in this class by comprehending that matter and energy are not in opposition. This is more Einstein stuff. That Einstein gave us the equation E, which is energy, equals, my face is the equal sign, mc squared, mass times the speed of light squared. Energy and mass, my face is the seesaw. Energy and mass, energy and mass. In math, if you have an equal sign, it means that that's the pivot point, and the two things on both sides have to be equal, okay? So we have in this dichotomy energy that is always at odds with matter. These two things are always fighting against each other. They're always opposed to each other. What happens if we put matter and energy on the same side of the equation? We just bent it around in a loop. You're like, oh, I don't know if we're allowed to do that. What's going to happen? Because then this is going to be very heavy on the pivot point of my face. It's going to go all the way down, all the way through the floor. What is going to be on the other side here to balance out that heaviness? And the answer is infinity. Matter plus energy on this side is infinitely heavy. In order to balance that out, we must put infinity on the other side. So when you reattain light speed, bullet train, you are matter plus energy moving at infinite speed, and the thing around you that balances that out is infinity. All of this requires a huge expansion of your consciousness into comprehending and embracing concepts of infinity that are otherwise difficult to work with or to grasp or have traction with, because mostly we work with numerals that represent something in reality. That mostly humans work with. I would like to buy 1 orange at the store, or 2 oranges at the store, or 10 oranges at the store. Like mostly this is for commodification, but we mostly don't say, I would like to buy infinity oranges at the store. We usually don't do that. And we usually don't say, like, I would like to buy 0 oranges at the store, because if you're doing that, you're not actually buying anything. There's no transaction. And we usually don't buy like the square root of 2 oranges at the store, or the square root of -1 oranges at the store. Like, these are conceptual numbers that don't really have an analog in the world. But mastering the concept of infinity, mastering the concept of singularity, mastering the concept of being at infinity and infinite energy is the essential personal growth that you have to do in order to be on the path of light at light speed. And when you're on infinity, when you're on infinity road with all of that light beaming to you and through you, and you are the garden hose that contains the light but is not dissolved by the light, and you have an infinite amount of alternative versions of self-state, all these other organisms that are also you, that are also experiencing infinity, and that every photon that you're experiencing has infinity inside of it. Like, you're wealthy beyond your wildest imagination. The world that you're coming out of is a world of materialism and finite limitations. And this is directly analogous to the changes in our economy and what is the definition of possible in our world moving forward. We're moving out of a materialistic economy and into one that is based upon your ability to manifest matter. As you master these concepts of matter plus energy being the same thing and being complemented by and balanced out by infinity, you're like, I am infinity and I have an infinite amount of infinity, and I can make an infinite amount of energy and an infinite amount of stuff. But this does not mean that we should make an infinite amount of cheap plastic garbage and sell it for whatever, one cent, or $5 in order to try to make a small amount of money. That's the old materialistic viewpoint. You are motivated differently. When you eat light, when you accelerate to light, when you have access to this economy of infinite energy, you are motivated differently. You do not have to get a job, kid, like smoking the cigar, chomping the cigar. You do not have to get out there and, sell some stuff in order to put your bread on the table, because literally you are bathed in and saturated with so much energy, and you have everything that you need, and you also have an infinite amount to share with others. So you're going to maintain your direct connection to light and to the source of all energy. And also, you are going to give generously to others, even as they give generously to you. And if that sounds like a paradise, it is. I am bringing the cognitive steps or the integument for your mind so that you know how to enter into paradise. That is what this path is all about. And as the stuff that is not supposed to be in existence is also entering into paradise, it enters into paradise as non-being. And that's what the entropy pathway is really all about. And a huge amount of the, not negotiations, but the wrangling, what we're doing as artists, where it's kind of like you draw, you paint, and you erase, like that part's not right, like this part's right, this part's not right, draw, erase, do this. All of this searching and refinement is the word I'm looking for, is really the where you put the actual boundary in order to say, this is the stuff we keep, this is the stuff that goes to entropy. That is the real aesthetic refinement process, so that the things that are supposed to be here are the things that are supposed to be here, and that the stuff that's not supposed to be here is the stuff that is not supposed to be here. So I'll also talk with you more, definitely, next week, because you asked about perception of light differ between the torus and the FRL shape. So the answer to that, as a short answer, is the FRL shape is the higher dimensional torus. That means you've added an additional dimension and you've added an additional degree of freedom. So that means you have a bigger perspective and you can get more stuff done. The analogy that I would use is, if you are two-dimensional, then you're like a little ant and you can only walk on the surface of time. But if you are three-dimensional, then you can jump off of the surface of time and you can fly wherever you want to. You can fly to any place in time, or you can fold time to you. So what I'm asking you to do with building up these mind muscles and these cognitive exercises is to consider you're not flying from one star to another star. You are bending the fabric of space-time and bringing all stars to overlap with you. And that you have a star in your mind that is you and the sun overlapping, and that you are every photon and every story that is contained within every photon overlapping on you, and you're every co-experiencer or other organism that is supposed to be in existence that is walking along experiencing this as well. And we must validate the journey of, like, my dog, a tree, a butterfly, even this annoying fly that is kind of like flying around my head in here is alive. It's an alive being. They all have singularity at the center of them, and they all have their own individuated time loops. So that little animation that I very laboriously showed you with the loops coming outward, you have to understand it's so complex. I just drew a few loops, but it's many, many, many organisms, and they're constantly moving outward and inward. And that's just of one star. You actually have many, many overlapping versions of that from all of these different stars. So, okay. I'm cutting you off now because you did enough of these giant overhead lifts today. Kind of like, okay, everybody, good job. You all need to hydrate. You need to take your electrolytes. You need to eat protein. You need to let your muscles rest. You have done heavy lifting. Very, very good job today. I have high praise for each one of you. Thank you for not being intimidated in order to be able to come here and talk about these things. And you're going to start to find your mind muscles are growing stronger as you do these mental exercises. Also, when you do your homework in the morning, get up and make your tea or your coffee with your tea kettle and look at that and be like, I am making my water more intelligent. As I boil this water, I am making my water more intelligent. Know that the gas in your combustion that is on your stove is literally expressing higher levels of intelligence into the water. And then, of course, every time you're eating food, you're eating light that is making you more intelligent. Start to think in terms of intelligence, start to walk around comprehending and meditating upon what light is, the profundity of its journey, and the profound implications of what it means for you. All right. And yeah, I'm always, of course, interested to hear from other people. Okay. So have a good rest. You can all now relax your mind, go watch cartoons, do something fun. I'm very silly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Love and gratitude right back to you. Thank you very much, everyone. Here, there we go.